as well as from your exam point of view, basically because it is very often repeated in your university question papers. Okay, but even apart from that, there is a very strong reason for us to understand the lumbopelvic rhythm because it is very relevant clinically. Okay, we have only touched upon, there is a lot more to learn, but at least these basic things you should understand. Why is it there, and what are the phases of it? What is the muscle work involved? What will contribute towards the normal lumbopelvic rhythm? And then, if you know normal, like we've been applying for all biomechanics, if you know biomechanics, you can understand pathomechanics. Okay, you can come to know what is going wrong at what region, right? So anyone has any questions? The last thing that we saw was the slide that you all are at right now, kinetics. Yeah, please let me know if there is a lot of background noise from my side, because in which case then I'll shift to the classroom.
No, ma'am, it's okay.
Okay, okay. Fine.
No.
So yeah, any questions? No, because if this is clear, we are now going to go on to a region which is different structurally as well as functionally. Should we proceed then?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, okay. So we should see the SI joint now. Okay. Now the major difference that takes place here is that you have gone from a spine which was interlinked, which was made up of interlinked structural units, and that is the vertebrae, which was designed so in order to provide mobility to that region. Okay, but now the requirement of this region is different. The function of this particular joint is stability and transmission of forces. Okay, and that is why in order to be able to do so, it has to compromise a little upon the mobility component, and that's why the amount of motion that was so far available to the spine is now not going to be present except for the L5S1. But if you remember, we said that from the upper lumbar to the lower lumbar spine also, except for a few movements, the L5 was actually more securely connected to the S1, and the major reason being that there were high amounts of shear forces and compression forces and a lot of vulnerability thereby to translations occurring in there, and that's why it was necessary that further ligamentous reinforcement and facetal orientation be provided in order to make that joint stable. And likewise, if we go ahead, the stability requirement continues to be here, because now whatever weight has fallen upon the spine was a central structure, it was a midline structure. But from here, it has to be distributed from the till the L5 S1. There was a single a sort of a receptor that was present, but now we are looking at two lower extremities, and thereby there has to be a division of these forces onto uh, between these two lower extremities, and that's why for that to take place, the SI joints need to be stable. SI and the general pelvis, because we'll also be talking about pubic symphysis today. Okay, so thus, in order to allow this function, there are going to be certain structural changes. Okay, one structural change that is very obviously seen is this is a vertical joint. So far, what you were seeing were horizontal joints. When we talked about the interbody joints, they were stacked, right? The vertebrae were stacked one upon the other. So most of the articulation was horizontal when it came to the interbody joints. When it came to facets, they were somewhat oriented but not completely transverse in the transverse plane. They were at 45 degrees or 60 degrees depending upon the region that they were in, right? The lumbar facets are almost vertical in fact. So coming down to these are also vertical joints, okay, and thus when, so we'll be talking about that further in kinetics. When there is going to be a distribution of forces through this vertical orientation is going to be actually necessary. How that happens, I will talk about later. We will start about